Greetings, Grail Quest Books fans, or Wars fans, or whoever it might be checking this out on the Grail Quest Books Facebook page and elsewhere, as it tends to spread throughout the internet. My name is Nathan P. Butler. I have been asked to take a moment to introduce you to me and some of my background as a writer attached to the Wars Novella project, and later, in a separate video segment, I'm going to be talking about the background of the Wars franchise, the card game, the RPG, where we're going with the Novella series, a little bit about the universe, things like that. But first, for this first segment, I have been asked to give you a little bit of information about myself so you have a sense of where we're all coming from. The last thing we want to do is leave you with the impression that we're all a bunch of amateurs who don't know what we're doing. We are, in fact, people who are very passionate about writing, in many cases have written before, and however, also have other professions outside of writing that hopefully will add some more depth to what it is that we're writing rather than detracting from it. In my case, again, I'm Nathan P. Butler. I, by profession, am a teacher, actually. I have my bachelor's degree in secondary education, specifically in social studies. I have taught debate, I've taught economics, which is really my forte. I've taught world history, a lot of different things, American government, constitutional law, quite a bit since getting my teaching license back in 2002, or my degree back in 2002. I have completed a master's program as well, so I have my master's in education with a specialization in integrating technology in the classroom. So I do a lot of things like podcasting with my students. Online, when it comes to fandom, the things that I'm probably best known for outside of writing and other projects like that, in fandom ventures at least, is that I am the creator and operator, maintainer, whatever you want to call me, of the Star Wars Timeline project, now known as the Star Wars Timeline Gold. This is the most comprehensive Star Wars chronology available, to my knowledge, anywhere in any language, and that includes within Lucasfilm itself. It's available at starwarsfanworks.com/timeline. I basically started it back right around the time I turned 18 in 1997, so here I am 30 years old thinking I was going to be finished with this by now, but it's kind of become a lifelong pursuit, I guess, or at least a big chunk of my life has become the host to that pursuit. I'm also known as the owner and operator of StarWarsFanWorks.com, which is a hub for the Star Wars fan audio community. You could say podcasting community, but it's a little bit more than just podcasts. There's online radio shows that don't do podcasting. There's audio dramas, audio parodies, and other things like that. We do convention appearances about podcasting and Star Wars and things like that. I myself have been an avid podcaster since 2002, back before the term podcasting actually existed. I'm pretty sure that the term podcasting came into existence right around 2004 or so, though don't hold me to that. I have been producing podcasts since 2002, as I mentioned, and I've produced several Star Wars audio dramas, quite a few podcasts to my name. Right now I host the Butlerniverse and a show called the EU Review from solosound.net, in the latter case, StarWarsFanWorks.com in the former case. Basically, I'm very heavy into the podcasting community. I like to discuss science fiction materials. I like to go in depth with them. I think one of the most important parts of any type of fiction is where it gets deeper into human condition, where it gets deeper into motivations of humanity, when it really kind of makes you think. And Wars very much will do that. It's sort of an action story. We want to get you entertained, as Josh said in a previous message, but where it's possible, we want to get you some more depth to these types of stories than you might see in other franchises that have a tendency to just kind of skid along the surface level of science fiction rather than using it in the way that really it classically has been used, to explore things about who we are and who the characters are in relation to us, that sort of thing. From a broader standpoint, though, you know about my fandom stuff, but that can make you sit back and just say, wait a second, this guy's just a fan. What in the world is he doing writing anything? And you know about my educational background in both teaching and in my degrees that led me into teaching. I have been a published writer before, both self-published and actually professionally published here. The things that you may have seen my work in before, if you are curious, is kind of varied. The first thing that I had published at any given point was a story that I wrote back in 2004, or I guess it was released in 2004, for Star Wars Tales. Dark Horse Comics has the license for Star Wars comic books, and at the time, they were revitalizing the Star Wars Tales line, and associate editor at the time, Jeremy Barlow, asked me if I wanted to write a story for Star Wars Tales. That in and of itself is kind of a big deal at least within fandom, because you usually don't see fans get the opportunity to do that. You have to be, quote, invited to the party, as they often say, and it's rare for a fan to get that opportunity. It just turned out that the confluence of my chronology knowledge, thanks to the Star Wars Timeline Gold, my knowledge, I guess, about the storylines themselves, my knowledge about the behind-the-scenes workings a little bit, the fact that I was very passionate about those behind-the-scenes workings and the creativity that goes into Star Wars, just all kind of came together and convinced Jeremy that, I might be the kind of guy who would be able to do something good, even though I hadn't necessarily had any prior experience outside of fandom materials. So, I wrote the story. It was called Equals and Opposites. It's probably best known as the story that brought Kyle Katarn into comic books, the character from the Jedi Knight video games, Jedi Outcast, Jedi Academy, all of those, and as one of the first comics to show the Yuuzhan Vong from the New Jedi Order novel series. Granted, we'd seen them before in it's sort of a hidden form. We saw the character of Nam Anor disguised in the Crimson Empire 2 comic book series. Here I am, sounding like a geek. But we'd never seen them beyond that. We'd never seen them as the warriors, kind of unleashed, so to speak, to use a Star Wars term for it. And this was the first time that happened. So it was kind of one of those comics that got a lot of buzz at the time, especially because of all the jokes about Kyle Katarn being very much like a Chuck Norris, So, the first story that I wrote, that Equals and Opposites, first appeared in Star Wars Tales number 21. Now, this is Star Wars Tales 21 right here. They released these with two covers back then. So you had your photo cover, if you want to call it that, sort of photoshopped cover, I tend to call it, and you had your artwork cover. And these were on shelves back in 2004, got a pretty positive reception. It was my story and two other stories, both in, or all three, I guess both is not the right word for it, all three of the stories in these issues. So you got my story, about 14 pages, plus two others all in the same issue, whether you bought, one cover or another. Eventually, they took all of those Star Wars Tales comics from that year, that is 21, 22, 23, and 24, with my story being from 21, and released that in what you'll probably find on bookstore shelves right now, and that is Star Wars Tales Volume 6. It's number 6, or Volume 6 within the trade paperback series. It's a much thicker edition, of course, because it contains 3 of these relatively large quarterly comic books in it, with my story being one of them. In fact, I think it's the last one, given the fact that it is chronologically last. It takes place during the New Jedi Order novel series. So, I had the 2 regular issues, and they collected it in this. Then I got a very unique treat. And this blew my mind when it happened, to be honest with you. And that was that they were producing these things called comic packs. If you're a Star Wars toy collector, or you ever stop by the Star Wars section in a toy aisle, say you got kids or something, you'll find that there are these special packs of Star Wars action figures that come with 2 action figures and a comic book. And the action figures are always based on the story in the comic book, the likenesses of the characters as they're portrayed in the comic, that sort of thing. They decided that since they hadn't done a Kyle Katarn figure in a very long time, they'd only done one years before, and they'd never done a Yuuzhan Vong action figure, they decided that my story would be the perfect one to allow them to do that as one of these comic packs. So, they eventually put out a comic pack that took my comic, close to the same cover, slight different logo and such, slight different numbers over to the side. They took my comic, just my story, out of the original comic, stripped out the other 2, produced it as this special edition version of the comic book, along with, I love these things, a Kyle Katarn action figure, very Chuck Norris looking in his face, yes. Kyle Katarn action figure for only the 2nd time ever, and a Yuuzhan Vong warrior. Yo mama! Got it. A very large Yuuzhan Vong action figure, very buffed out Yuuzhan Vong action figure. He's probably going to pump you up, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, if you see these on store shelves, it all comes together, and that was this. This is sort of the thing that blew me away. It is my Star Wars comic pack. I never, ever would have expected when I got a chance to write that story that it would wind up being reprinted several ways, but also wind up having action figures based on it. Absolutely blew my mind. It took a while for this to come out. It kept being delayed and delayed and delayed. It finally came out in summer of 2009, almost fall of 2009, really. But it became very sought after because of the Yuuzhan Vong, because of Kyle Katarn. So it's one of the more infamous comic packs out there, though not so much because of my writing as, well, they're just cool characters, right? I have also had the opportunity to work within the Star Wars universe from a continuity standpoint, helping out other projects. I provided some information to Leland Chee, Keeper of the Holocron, at times. We've done things like pin down birth dates for certain characters, things that are very geek-oriented that Star Wars fans might appreciate, but others would probably just kind of shake their head at and say, okay, well, what's the big deal? I also did get a chance to take part, and this was kind of playing into my chronological forte. There you go. See, you couldn't say it either. Try saying it 3 times fast. Try saying it 1 time fast. Chronological, never mind. My date information led me to eventually get a chance to help out Dan Wallace and Jason Fry in their book, The Star Wars Essential Atlas. Now, it's an amazing book, and that amazingness has nothing to do with me. Okay, Jason and Dan did an amazing job with this, but I had the opportunity to do a couple of things. For example, I had the opportunity, if I can flip to the correct page here to show you, I had the opportunity to provide dates, in-universe calendar dates. Star Wars uses sort of an in-universe digital calendar that's not quite like ours. It's close, but not quite. And produced a series of dates for some maps. Basically, if you look here, the Thrawn campaign, or Thrawn's campaigns, if you check out that map in the book, you'll find that all the different battles have specific dates for them. Those were dates that I derived. In the process, I wound up deriving the birth dates of Han and Leia's children and things like that, because they were necessary to make that work. Probably the coolest thing about it, getting a chance to work on the Atlas, was the fact that we wanted to basically include some information about the films. And they had already decided to include maps of the routes that the characters take during the films, but we decided that to make sure that people understood the way that the dates worked in Star Wars, we would include the dates for the films. And there were already in-universe dates for all the films except Return of the Jedi. There was one for The Phantom Menace. It was pretty much assumed within Lucasfilm. We finally put it in print. And there was one date that I wound up having a typo on that really drives me crazy because it made its way into the book. But Return of the Jedi never had an in-universe date. And you probably can't see it on the little webcam here, but in their profile of Return of the Jedi, with the events on one side and the map on the other, up at the very top, they have a date for when the events of the movie start. And I was able to be the one to decide what that date would be based on prior evidence. It was fun. It was a great process. It's not my book. It's not credited to me or anything like that. I'm just kind of in the thanks. Me and Eddie Vanderheiden worked very hard to provide some dates to help sort of bring out the in-universe flair of a book like this that's already really good anyway. So I've had a chance to play around in Star Wars, and writing the story Equals and Opposites for Star Wars Tales gave me a sense of I guess what I'm looking for is confidence. It gave me the sense that, you know what, I could write a story and maybe people would actually want to read it. So eventually I got the confidence and took the time to write my first novella. Now this was an original novella entitled Echoes. Put out 2 versions of it. I self-published it. I put out 2 versions. You have a small and large, or I guess large and small, the way I just held them up there, called Echoes. The idea of Echoes was it's sort of a cross between The West Wing, Law and Order, with a little bit of an X-Files twist thrown into the mix. This is the first thing that I had published, and I actually put it out there first as what's called a podio book, or a podcast novel. That's when you do a short fiction story, and you do it as audio. And you put it out as a podcast file so people can download it and listen to it for free, basically, just to kind of get an audience built out there. You can find Echoes at StarWarsFanWorks.com/Echoes, because StarWarsFanWorks.com is my own website. Or you can find the audio version, a very good quality audio version, over on podiobooks.com, P-O-D-I-O books.com. Later, and this was actually in 2009, I finally finished up my first full-length novel, something that I had wanted to do since finishing up Echoes, and that is a time travel story involving telepaths, historical parallels, and things like that, entitled Greater Good, which I also self-published with Greater Good in hardback and paperback here, albeit a very thick paperback. It's a full-length novel, about triple the size of Echoes. That is also in audio form on podiobooks.com. You can also find it StarWarsFanWorks.com/greatergood. Both of these are actually for sale if you want to pick up a paper copy of it, if you like reading an actual book, over on lulu.com. That's Lulu.com. grailquest.com. Just look them up by title, Echoes or Greater Good. And now, it was actually right as I was finishing up Greater Good and kind of getting the podcast version of it out there that I wound up being contacted by Josh Radke of GrailQuest Books, saying, hey, we've got this property, this Decipher card game entitled Wars, and we'd like to know if you'd be interested in writing a novella for the Earther faction for when we put out this series of novellas. And I first learned a little bit more about Wars, became very excited about it, became a big fan of Wars, having never played the card game back when it was originally released. And now you'll find that this previously self-published fiction author, previously published Star Wars comic author, and Star Wars aficionado all around, and big sci-fi fan and huge geek, will be now writing the first of the novellas that you will see, the first of the Earthers, but also the first of the entire graphic novella series. And my story, currently untitled as of the time I'm recording this, will be featuring two specific, well, actually quite a few specific characters that Wars fans would know about. The ones I can reveal, or the one and his ship that I can reveal because it's been revealed in press releases, is the main protagonist of the story will be Rogan Hallard. Card game fans, this is our boy right here. Rogan Hallard of Z-Lab's Venusian Rangers and captain of a starship known as the Shadow Surfer. So this guy and this ship play prominently into the story. But if you're a big fan of the Wars card game, I'm telling you, you're going to see a lot of familiar faces, you're going to see a lot of familiar situations, but you'll also see some faces start out in somewhat unfamiliar positions, because this is a tale of how some of them become who they are by the time we see them in the game, and we're sort of building up certain characters and their connections. You won't want to miss it if you're a fan of Wars. You won't want to miss it if you're a sci-fi fan looking to get into a great new franchise, but more on the Wars franchise in another video clip. I hope you now feel a little more confident about me as a writer, or you know a little bit more about me as a writer. Thank you very much, and I hope you check out the pre-order promotion, and hope you check out grailquestbooks.com for more information. Thanks, everybody.